guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing part 4 of our Uranus series. This is the action at Kalach. There was an earlier battle in August, but this is basically the decisive breakthrough by Russian armour against German forces, and it's a very interesting small what-if type battle in itself. Today we're going to be using again Achtung Panzer, which is a system very compatible to Flames of War for those players, and it's going to be a community based system. So I'm going to take you straight back into the game, and we're having a look at a bird's eye view. This is the Soviet column, which was approaching through a blizzard with its headlights on. As you can see, there's a building there and a sentry post. The irony of this whole situation was that there was a gunnery range on the other side, which we'll come up and see in a moment. But basically what happened was the sentry mistook the Russian tanks as captured Russian tanks, which were going to be used for the gunnery range. His sheer horror must have been quite outstanding when he saw that this was a massive Russian column. We're just whizzing over now to the gunnery range, and you can see a KV there as a simulation and a T-34, and looking further up towards the actual battle field of Kalach itself. So as we start the game, basically we're going to get straight into it. So the barrier is lift, he fails reaction, which is what happened historically. The ATA and the infantry in the trenches are just not ready as such. They're basically huddled down in this freezing snow, not expecting troops to come from the rear, especially a large quantity of Soviet troops. Kalach itself has a small little aid station. The troops there are obviously just intermittently going about their daily routine, and we can see a few abandoned positions from the 42 battle. However, the Soviets pour on with a huge amount of armour and infantry supported in trucks. The sentry, as I said, fails his reaction check, the barrier is raised, and effectively the tanks steamroll straight over the bridge. This is a disaster, basically. This effectively cuts the reserve forces for Germany off on this bridge. The Russians are racing rapidly towards it. The sentry, on seeing his mistake, runs to headquarters and tries to notify them, but again, after repeated skill checks, keeps failing to get through to headquarters. Meanwhile, the Russians continue to disgorge over the bridge and start unleashing hell upon the pin down to reflect their unawareness position of the German forces. The light tanks obviously move up to cover basically the bridge crossing and provide support fire, and meantime the T-34s begin to fan out. It's a pretty critical battle in itself, and was to determine the fate really of Stalingrad. So that one man, had he not basically failed, who knows. But meantime, the gunnery battery try and get into the game, but are immediately hit by an air card and effectively knocked out, which is pretty bad luck. The T-34s continue on, and today was going to be the Soviet day. Everything went right, every dice roll. The Germans just couldn't seem to get it together, and I think that reflected very well what had actually happened. The Soviets basically carrying troops on the back of the tanks as tank riders start to disgorge that infantry, which is going to make a direct assault. They're not mucking around in this game, they're going straight for the objective, and they're going to secure it and take it. Meanwhile, the 88, which has just been under so much suppressive fire, can't do much. The column continues to move up the road, and the 88 suddenly becomes sort of unpinned, opens fire, knocks 3 tanks out. But there's the Soviet tanks just basically halt, turn their turrets around, and unleash a barrage of fire back into the 88. Meanwhile, the infantry are suppressing the infantry in the town. The Russian infantry are taking fire though, and the signaller just can't get through to headquarters. No matter what he seems to do, everything's going wrong. So it's one of those days which really mirrored history very, very well, and I'm very delighted with how this battle sort of came out. I mean, you could argue, well, that's not much fun, but it was an incredibly good game for the players as well. We really enjoyed it. So what you can see now is basically that never-ending column, and you also begin to see the arrival of German reserves, but they would have come in scattered and all in the wrong place. These engineers, the Panzers over on the other side of the bridge, even with an ambush of the sniper, they just couldn't suppress or get anything right today. no matter how hard those Panzer IIIs tried to engage, they were going to be meeting a huge furrow of Russian troops. And in fact, they got there. T-34s came on a battle deck, the T-70s responded, and the Soviets just basically charged Kalach in itself. And they got a lot of lucky hits, killing a lot, but they were basically hit by an ambush minefield. But again, in reaction, they saved loads. It was just one of those days, and one of those poor performances really that reflects the history and the chaos and the confusion that was going on at the moment. Here we see the Russians pressing forward, the civilians once again displaced into the snow, probably to perish in these freezing and awful conditions. But the Russians have basically secured and done what they wanted today. And I think if you look back at the history of this point, the Kalach bridge itself was a critical one. No matter what the Germans tried or could have done, I don't think they could have prevented this historically, and I think what we've seen here today basically reflects that quite well. So I'm just going to finish off with a few last pictures. Obviously this is where the knoll where the 88 was, which was suppressed, was overrun by the scouts as well. They came straight over the bridge, got off their jeeps, and then basically the following turn went into assault and did very well. This is where we see the panzers basically arriving, but subsequently the infantry all dismount and start to attack the tanks, which was very aggressive and bold by the commander, but it did the desired effect. Here we can see basically the fighting hand to hand around the small little outskirts of Kalach, and ultimately we see the Germans forced out, failing to counterattack in the first assault, then failing company morale, platoon morale as well. It just didn't happen, and I'm very, as I said, I'm quite delighted with the outcome. And so this is the sort of final video of where the positions were. The Germans had to really withdraw. The objective had been secured very, very quickly by turn 6. That's what I anticipated, and it sort of ran to that. It could have gone completely differently. Again, had the reaction been made on the bridge, they may have stopped them for a moment, and that may have given the Germans more time, but their reserves failed to come in. The weather was against them. When the reserves arrived, they were scattered. The Panzer IIIs lost one tank. They bailed a T-34 out. But this wasn't about a tank battle. This was really about how quickly they could respond to this surprise assault. So ultimately, I think a good-looking game. It flowed well, it went well, and always difficult to put these simulations on. So we've got Cross of Iron coming on soon, and we'll be back to Stalingrad, no doubt, shortly. But in the meantime, can I once again ask you to support, subscribe, and enjoy what we're doing. It's not long now, but kick off soon for Norway, where we'll be running our campaign and producing what we did for Flames of Poland, or Poland in Flames. We'll be doing the same with Norway in Flames. So until later, stay safe, enjoy your gaming, and we'll be back soon. Best wishes. Bye for now.